don't ever let me be. I only wanna be by your side. Please, don't ever let me be. I only wanna be by your side. Girl, you really got me down. You got me so I don't know what else you will.
Named for their stylistic inspiration, glam rock, which included the likes of David Bowie, Freddie Mercury, and Elton John. Glam metal took glam rock's outfits, hair, and all-around absurdity and added a splash of hard rock, mixing it with pop sensibilities to create something all around different. The song you just heard was by band Van Halen, and the guitar solo during the beginning, Eruption, from guitar virtuoso and co-namesake of the band, Eddie Van Halen, had one of the biggest influences on early hair metal guitar playing. He popularized the trend of tapping, in which a guitar string is tapped instead of plucked, and the solo is widely regarded as one of the greatest guitar solos of all time. And soon after Van Halen's self-titled debut album, with this revolutionary song on it, was released, legions of bands began to emerge. Motley Crue released their first album, Too Fast for Love, which peaked at 77 on the Billboard 200 in 1981. And in 1982, Night Ranger's first album, Dawn Patrol, was released and cracked the top 40. Glam metal wasn't there, but the interest was. And then came 1983. Out of relative obscurity came Quiet Riot, with their earth-shattering single, Come On Feel the Noise, which brought their album Metal Health to the top of the Billboard charts, becoming the first ever metal album to reach that peak position.
Montag lieben, glauben, globen.
Alright. I got something to say. Yeah. It's better to burn out. Yeah. Than fade away. Alright. Gonna start a fire.
And then arrived Def Leppard, with their eventually 10 times platinum behemoth Pyromania, with hits like Rock of Ages, Foolin', and Photograph, which all had a large influence on later music of the genre. There was no stopping it. Glam metal was a cultural phenomenon.
What do you want? What do you want? Yes, I do.
1984 and 1985 passed with a slew of glam metal hits, but 1986 was probably the biggest year.
Alright.
In 1986, a boy from New Jersey took the world by storm. Bon Jovi's certified 12-time platinum album, Slippery When Wet, was the top-selling album of that year, and eventually sold over 22 million copies worldwide. Glam metal was no longer a genre. It was mainstream music. Swedish band Europe had their number one hit, The Final Countdown, during this year. And Pennsylvania band Cinderella burst onto the scene with a massive debut, bolstered by their single, Nobody's Fool, and their gig touring with Bon Jovi. This song also brings to light an aspect of glam metal that has been neglected by me thus far. Power ballads were an integral part of glam metal. They began with a slower and less loud portion, then built to an explosive climax. These songs were filled with emotion and helped to appeal to a wider audience. Glam metal was so popular that other, typically hard metal bands began to incorporate their trademark sounds, mostly inspired by Def Leppard, who leads us perfectly into 1987. With a massive hit already under their belt, Hysteria was aimed to be Def Leppard's Thriller, an album where every song could become a hit single, and they were not wrong. Hysteria went 12 times platinum and spawned 7 hit singles: Woman, Rocket, Animal, Love Bites, Armageddon It, Hysteria, and their biggest song ever, Pour Some Sugar on Me. Notice the simple and hard drum beat and simple riff of the verse, which transitions to a chord-based, poppy chorus.
Come and get it on. Living like a lover with a red iPhone. Looking like a tramp, like a video bam. Demolition woman, can I be your man? Wrestling and dancing and a fashion little day. Television lover, baby, coordinate. Sometime, anytime, sugar me sweet. Little miss of innocent, sugar me, yeah.
And then it came. The greatest and biggest debut album ever. Guns N' Roses, originally formed as a conglomeration of Hollywood Rose and LA Guns, released their debut album, Appetite for Destruction, which took about a year to get to number 1, but once it got there, it stuck around. With a more toned-down and gritty aesthetic and number 1 hit power ballad Sweet Child of Mine, they found success. Appetite for Destruction was certified 18 times platinum in the US, went to sell on over 30 million copies worldwide, and is one of the best-selling albums of all time. Not bad for a first record. After going to rehab, Motley Crue released their most successful album, both critically and commercially, Dr. Feelgood in 1989, and in 1991, Guns N' Roses released both Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, and Van Halen released 4 Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, all 3 extremely successful. Hair metal would never again reach the heyday of the mid-80s, but they were still popular. For now.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
In 1988, a film called The Decline of Western Civilization 2: The Metal Years was released. It used several shocking scenes, seemingly displaying the awfulness of the excess that came with glam metal, which even if partially faked, as some participants have said it was, it still had a large effect, and while the film didn't flat out kill glam metal, its attitude toward it gestated in the American subconscious for 3 years, inspiring many teenagers to turn their musical talents in a different, darker direction. It's no coincidence that Guns N' Roses, of all acts, was most popular, as they had a darker tone. Several bands began to lose members. Motley Crue lost its frontman Vince Neil, and Poison, Def Leppard, and Guns N' Roses all lost guitar players. Additionally, people began to become disinterested in power ballads, which had previously been a large amount of the mass market appeal. But all of this is trivial to what came in the winter of 1991. You already know what it is. Nirvana's album Nevermind, released in 1991, had a dark and gritty sound and used darker lyrics. It was a complete rejection of glam metal, angry, loud, and a less from polished sound. It was called grunge, and this was the next new thing. The future was murky for glam metal. Grunge was extremely successful, and interest in the genre was dying down. From the viewpoints of the bands, they had 2 options: stay the same or try to adapt. Guns N' Roses released their last album with the majority of the original lineup, The Spaghetti Incident, in 1993, to moderate success, and Van Halen released Balance in 1995, to moderate success as well. Both bands effectively broke up immediately after their releases. Warrant attempted to make a more grungy album, which flopped. And with most of the bands already broken up, there was just nowhere left to go. And so died glam metal.
Never saw. I need a change, I need it quick before it makes me sick. That's what's on my mind. Now pay attention, watch your back, pay your dues and stay on track. Got no room to second guess. Puts me under stress. Oh, if I were you, if you were me, wonder who I wanna be. With just one wish I can't refuse, I wouldn't know what to choose.
And then it forgot to die and went to do some cocaine. During the late 90s and early 2000s, glam metal began to see a resurgence in popularity. Motley Crue reunited with Vince Neil, released an album, and began to tour extensively in 1997, and Poison reunited as well. Europe's The Final Countdown enjoyed significant popularity in 1999 as the millennium drew to a close. Additionally, Bon Jovi was still popular and hadn't waned in popularity at all. He had released several successful albums throughout the last 19 years. Van Halen reunited twice, went on a couple of tours, and released A Different Kind of Truth with David Lee Roth in 2012. In 2008, the final Guns N' Roses album, Chinese Democracy, was released, but the band has since reunited to go on many tours. Slash specifically has had a large amount of success as a solo artist. Nostalgia for glam metal has sparked numerous festivals and a musical, Rock of Ages, was performed on Broadway in 2008. So that was glam metal. It was wild, it was crazy, and it will never die.